Good morning, everyone. Welcome to week 6. Can you believe that we are this far into it? Just a few more weeks and we are done. I hate to say it, I've enjoyed this class very much and I hate to see it end. Um, you'll find that the slideshows for chapter 9 and chapter 10 are going to be very brief. A lot of these issues we've covered in previous chapters, and so I don't believe in repeating everything, so I'm just going to keep it kind of bare bones. Um, so global infectious diseases, that's what we're talking about in chapter 9. We're all aware of the non-communicable diseases that run rampant in our communities, obesity, diabetes, cancer, heart disease. We tend not to really give a lot of attention to infectious diseases until there's some kind of outbreak or panic. Um, Swine flu, bird flu, H1N1. Right now, Zika is a big one that's in the news. And then we've got regional outbreaks of things like E. coli and Salmonella. We've all heard of food recalls, restaurants closing down when they find evidence of Salmonella. So we're very fortunate in the US in that we have specific measures like these quarantines, like these recalls in place that stop the spread of some of these diseases. Unfortunately, in other parts of the world, they aren't so lucky. These things can be devastating. They turn into epidemics and end up costing thousands of lives. So we've talked about specific infectious diseases in previous chapters, but I wanted to go over just a few that are still very, very prevalent within the United States, within our region, and even within our own community, especially STIs. We've not seen a huge decrease in some of these just because people are not using proper precautions. They're not practicing safe sex. So we're seeing an increase of these, well, an increase, kind of a static number of these particular diseases like chlamydia, gonorrhea, hepatitis B, herpes, and HIV. And then, of course, we've got our respiratory diseases, just like what I've got going on right now. I've got a sinus infection, just went in. I'm going on 2 weeks now, but I started antibiotics. Can we remember that that is a secondary prevention? I started my antibiotics on Wednesday, so I'm finally kind of turning the corner. I'm going to try not to cough during this audio presentation, but I apologize in advance if I do. So these respiratory diseases like influenza, the colds, tuberculosis, whooping cough. Whooping cough in particular is one of those that we have seen kind of an increase in recent winters. It used to not be nearly as common as it is now, but we are seeing greater outbreaks amongst our infants and toddlers. Um, Perhaps vaccination. Can we say that that may be a cause or lack of vaccination? So anyway, again, as discussed in previous chapters, we've got 4 main culprits for these pathogens that cause infection. Bacteria, just like in my sinus infection, is a bacterial infection. Viruses, that's common cold. Herpes is a virus. We have parasites and fungi. So bacteria and viruses are pretty self-explanatory. We generally know that those are um, pretty much common. That's our common colds. That's our stomach flus. Um, Different kind of viruses and bacteria will cause sickness every semester. One of the things we don't really think about are parasites. So these are organisms that survive by living off of a host. Um, they Ticks, fleas, they are living off the host of an animal, feeding off of the blood. Mosquitoes would be a parasite. Um, One of the things that we don't really talk about are worms. So we've got parasitic worms that live inside the body of a host. I don't know how many of you have dogs or cats, but worms are a common thing that you have to treat with, especially when you first adopt an animal. Also, fungi. Fungi comes in many forms. This includes our molds and yeast. So, disgusting as it sounds, yeast infections. Um, A lot of people may have an allergy to molds, but what really causes these is like an overgrowth of the yeast or the mold. So they frequently, these fungal infections, again, athlete's foot is one that comes to mind, frequently occur after the bacteria that normally live in or on the body is disturbed by antibiotic use or autoimmune suppression. So this is why a lot of times someone will develop a yeast infection while they're on antibiotic therapy for a bacterial infection. So moving on, disease transmission. Pretty much we all know about direct contact. So this is when, someone such as myself, I've got this cold or I've got this sinus infection, I may sneeze or cough, and those droplets are transmitted onto someone else. So usually someone may get a droplet of a sneeze or a cough and touch their nose, touch their mouth or their eyes. That's a portal of entry for that bacteria or that virus to enter into. Unfortunately, fecal oral transmission is just like it sounds. So when a person ingests products contaminated with fecal matter from either animals or humans. So this could be something as simple as drinking water from a river. We do have wild animals that do defecate in or near the water. Also, it comes from lack of hand washing after using the restroom. This is why, this primary prevention such as hand washing is very, very important. Mother to child transmission. This is either passed to the fetus during pregnancy or while a mother is nursing, it's passed through the breast milk. And then, of course, we've got the vector. So this is usually our parasites, such as our mosquitoes, ticks, fleas that spread these vector-borne illnesses, vector-borne diseases, and Lyme disease is one of those. Malaria is one of those. We don't, obviously, we don't see a lot of malaria in the United States. However, Lyme disease is becoming more of an actuality with our ticks, and of course, some of our diseases that are spread by mosquitoes, West Nile virus. So they are certain infectious diseases that we need to be aware of, especially in the Northwest with our huge population of ticks and fleas and mosquitoes. So prevention of disease, you would think this would be self-explanatory. However, it is not always the case. So obviously the first one, behavior change. Changing behaviors and really using those primary preventions such as hand washing, eating differently. This would be the case for both infectious and non-communicable diseases. Also sexually transmitted diseases. We want to make sure that we're practicing our primary preventions in preventing these diseases. Control of environment. So this is something that's probably not as easily done as it is talked about, but maybe community preventions, vaccinations. Control of environment also ties into vaccinations, even though I've got them listed separately. But in vaccinating the population, you may prevent some of the spread of an infection. So again, controlling environment, cleaning up the waste of animals. Again, hand washing, having access to clean water. We've talked at length about vaccinations. I cannot promote those enough. Herd immunity does not work. We're starting to see more and more incidents of disease that had been dormant for a long time. Drug therapies. This is a treatment especially for things that have that are treatable by a drug. HIV/AIDS, we've developed drug therapies now that spread or slow the spread, slow the progression of the disease. Um, I wanted to bring up surveillance and then the eventual elimination and eradication of disease. So, surveillance systems track those disease reports from hospitals and other sources to kind of look for patterns so that the epidemiologists can develop control measures. This is where those food recalls come into place. Um, Hospitals will report things such as cases of flu so that we know how many flu outbreaks we have in the Treasure Valley, in the state of Idaho, in the US, etc. So when we talk about elimination and eradication, a lot of this will come due to vaccines. Things such as smallpox, where we've been vaccinated against those, we don't see that as a threat any longer. Obviously, our end goal is to eliminate and eradicate infectious diseases. Unfortunately, not a reality. I wish that they would come up with a cure for the common cold. Everyone gets it at least once or twice a year. Not fun. It's kind of miserable, and it's such a spreadable infection. So it's like you get one person in class that has a cold, and eventually everyone within the class, everyone within the dorm, um, throughout campus will be affected with this. So that kind of wraps up chapter 9. Please let me know if any questions, if you need any clarifications. I do apologize, chapter 9, chapter 10 being kind of reiterations of previous chapters, just really kind of drilling down more specifically into disease prevention and agents of infection. So again, please use the Ask the Instructor link or email me if anything comes up, and I will see you in chapter 10.